Picture it, it's 2019. You just got a fat tax refund. And like the financially irresponsible adult that you are, you squander it on getting fake cheeks in the Caribbean. Waddled back into this country looking like you were smuggling two little people back from the Dominican Republic in your sweatpants. But the Instagram likes are drying up. And now every time you walk into a room, it smells like week-old mofongo. All you gotta do is take the bus over to my place, and I'll suck the fat out myself. I'd use like a vacuum, like the ones that they use to clean lint and dog hair out of couch crevices. What is the difference, really, between a couch and a human body? People hate to see an entrepreneurial woman thrive in medicine just because she's not licensed. What do you even need my papers for? What are you, a Fed? Book your de-cheekification now. Last video, I covered the rise of the BBL, but, looking around, seems like some of these broads deflated. The past few years, everyone is talking about how, oh, the BBL is out, I was at Goodwill and I saw a pair of cheeks in the discount section. But has the procedure actually gone down in popularity? The 2010s saw the rise of many things. The IPA-scented stomp clap music, ushering in an aesthetic that I can only describe as gentrified Appalachia. Wigga Justin Bieber, Jaquavius, emerged from the cocoon of his former bowl cut-having self. And of course, the BBL became a mainstream acronym, with 2015 to 2019 marking the largest increase in the procedure. 2019 was the peak of its popularity, but there was another surge that happened in 2021, with surgeons performing over 60,000 of these pump procedures. So that was a 35% increase compared to 2020. The 2020 lull in surgeries was, most likely due to the lockdown, and most of these clinics being legally required to slow down the amount of patients they could take in. So the 2021 spike was probably just people either rescheduling their surgeries or people taking advantage of the clinics finally opening up. Maybe the only thing to heal the trauma of lockdown is to finally be dragging a wagon. You think an insurance company would buy that? Through 2025 though, the BBL was still a top 5 surgery. So still fairly popular. However, clinics did report that after 2020, there were more former clients coming in asking to either remove or often downsize their enhanced behind. And with new clients desiring a more modest tush compared to previous years. A lot less of the super exaggerated hips. So it seems that even amongst non-celebrity clients, because oftentimes the public figures downsizing are the ones that get the most attention, but we don't know if that is accurately reflected amongst the general population. But in this case, it seems like it was. The most common reasons for this being dissatisfaction with the outcome, an exaggerated augmentation, asymmetry, cellulite, or changes in personal preference and trends. With reports of the Topeka tush rising in popularity. If somebody said that my behind reminded them of Kansas, I'd probably cry in my car for 10 minutes. I kind of get it, like the Midwest is supposed to be modest, and the public loves some alliteration. What were their other alternatives? Toronto tush?
Man's never been in Marquee when it's shut down, eh? Trust me, daddy.
Tampa tush? What would that even mean? Your butt looks like it would set fire to its own boat to collect the insurance money. As mentioned in my previous video on the rise of the BBL, there is a difference between a body ideal versus a trend. So a downsized version of this procedure still being popular isn't surprising, since having a tight-toned tush looking like, two little Hawaiian rolls falls into the ideal category. The super exaggerated behinds were, gonna be trendy at best, more often than not being the subject of derision as opposed to praise or envy. I would argue that the extreme end of the spectrum was never trendy to begin with, since the individuals in this category were few and far between. Barely anybody was going this crazy, okay? That's why they get YouTube documentaries made about them that you watch on your lunch break, eating your tuna salad. Look, people with these sort of extremely exaggerated cosmetic procedures, right? They're usually in the adult entertainment industry. That backside that weighs as much as a toddler was financed by a bunch of perverted married men. Probably from Topeka. That's a callback. And who says YouTubers are just failed stand-ups? I do. because it's true. Now, cosmetic procedures popularity, usually plateaus. Sometimes they'll regain popularity down the line, but they usually don't experience, this sort of exponential, consistent amount of growth every single year. And trends, by definition, go out of fashion, right? But there are several other factors at play here. Some theories regarding why the BBL deflated. The most common one that I've heard is that the look became too accessible, that it was no longer a wealth signifier.
Here is the thing about plastic surgery, which has actually happened kind of abruptly, because it has recently become more widely available, more accessible, cheaper, no longer necessarily indicating that you are wealthy. And so the wealthy have started to look for other ways to signal their wealth. The Kardashians removing their BBLs, implants also becoming passe, almost certainly in part because they're unhealthy, but also because they're just not on trend.
The usage of wealth signifier in this context, we'll touch on that. The Kardashians, arguably the reason that this procedure became so mainstream, did have a notable downsizing in the past few years. They also did lose weight over the years, which can cause BBLs to reduce in size since, it's your own fat just redistributed. So that weight loss also probably played a role in their general shrinkage. Not a full extraction, but some of the fat has clearly been sucked out. Saved it, perhaps, to pass down to their children as a sort of disturbing family heirloom. With the joke being that, the second they saw the sweaty masses getting their cheeks done on layaway, if you will, that's someone's life right now. They said, pack it up, the poors have access to this now. This family is so obsessed with maintaining relevance and a sort of sensual desirability, that is part of their brand, that their appearance can be seen as a reflection of shifts in cultural and aesthetic trends. The argument that this is no longer a wealth signifier is absurd. The BBL was never a wealth signifier. Ever. There were no upper middle class wasps walking around Westchester with newly acquired nyash. At least not a noticeable one. And if you want to talk about real old money, not even just upper middle class or upper class wealth. No. Like real, we still own people wealth. Any Rothschild or Rockefeller that was walking around with a new Meg the Stallion physique would end up getting hunted for sport by the rest of the family. Instinctively, I think that level of artificial cheekage would tap into some sort of primal bloodthirst. A noticeable BBL was, if anything, a new money signifier. It was when it was less common. Any obvious and excessive cosmetic procedures, especially on younger people, are already seen as being in poor taste, not just by rich people, but, maintaining a level of respectability is paramount in those circles. And a gigantic backside that you paid for, by the way, you can't even say that it's natural, was always going to be seen as too ethnic, too artificial, too tacky, and too overtly sensual. And to be fair, nobody gets this procedure because they want less people to look at them, especially the super exaggerated ones. There is this desperate, palpable desire to be looked at that comes with excessive cosmetic procedures, where you're also basically just wearing your insecurities on full display. Like, we can see exactly, what features you clearly did not like. The only procedures that I can think of that tend to be associated with the rich are facelifts and Botox, and that's because, aging is inevitable, and no amount of money can really prevent our bodies from deteriorating on full display. I do think the procedure being more accessible was a factor. It did make the physique less of a rare commodity compared to, back 12, 15 years ago, when less people were in the know that you could even get this level of remodeling done. And by 2020, considering the number of cheap, chop shop clinics that are run out of a condemned Sears and unlicensed nurses injecting people with silly putty, the silhouette, which was never really a wealth indicator, now it wasn't even a new money indicator. It was a silhouette that was also very deeply associated with brands like Fashion Nova, that simply having this body, right, would end up making expensive outfits look like fast fashion. Now, usually this is a comment that occurs in situations where it is very apparent that the person has gotten work done, but it still sucks if you are naturally bottom heavy, because this reinforces the association of that silhouette with being cheap or common. By the 2020s, like, the public's awareness of this surgery was so high that beyond a certain size, right, you couldn't even hide it. Everybody could tell that you clearly got your body done, as if the humiliation ritual of having to fly back to your hometown in this position to avoid blood clots wasn't bad enough. Now everybody knows why you can't sit down for that flight.
Mommy, why is that woman standing like that?
Because, little Timmy, she wanted to be double caked up. She's empowered now.
Oh.
BBL accusations were being thrown around willy-nilly. If you went MIA for a few weeks as a public figure, people would just start speculating. Remember when Kate Middleton went missing and people were joking that she was getting her body done? About to walk out of Kensington Palace looking like Nikki on that tarmac to Prague. Or, people thought that she was getting cloned. Maybe she saw something she wasn't supposed to. Like Queen Elizabeth, still alive, hitting the Quan in Buckingham Palace. Could also mean her assaulting a member of the staff. Kate knew that Lizzie was pulling a Tupac. She said,
I don't want anything to do with this ghetto family.
It turns out she was getting cancer treatment. So, sorry, Kate. Regardless, this was a sign that at this point, the BBL had fully become a joke. Because back in the day, if you went MIA as a public figure, people just thought you were like in rehab for exhaustion. Having, what people would describe as a BBL build, that became a meme. Plus, alongside the rise of backside enhancements, a more developed lower body was still trendy. It also meant a rise in just standard lower body workouts, which meant that naturally built glutes and legs were also getting more attention. So the artifice of the BBL, which tended to leave the legs disproportionately small, started to become even more noticeable when compared to the real thing. And to make matters worse, the hip-hop subculture that had put not only the slim thick ideal, but also, the more artificial BBL silhouette on a pedestal, was not as culturally relevant or trend-setting as it was in the mid-2010s. Matter of fact, Drake, the sonic king of the 2010s, who represented that, having a thick chick on your arm courtside just to ignore her subsection of rap, lost his second and more consequential rap beef to Kendrick. So going forward into the 2020s, right, more culturally relevant and respected forces in hip-hop, even they were shifting away from this more artificial look to the point where even female rappers that had been, having a renaissance really, who had clearly gotten work done, were receiving quite a lot of backlash for it. And the only women who were still aesthetically put on a pedestal were, well, frankly, the women who naturally had a build like this, right? Think Megan Thee Stallion or Ice Spice. Most of the individuals who would undergo such an extensive procedure, especially the more, IG baddie end of the spectrum, tend to be more invested in what is trendy, so they would be more likely to shift aesthetics based on what is popular, especially if their career is in a visual medium. They have to appeal to the masses. So now that it's too common, everyone can clock that you have one from a mile away, and it's way more stigmatized than ever before, in part because, it is a reflection of, not only your insecurities, but also what you value. Like, you valued having a large backside over saving that money, or better yet, trying to achieve one naturally. Like, this is the one procedure that, I get you can only do so much in terms of, reshaping your hips, I guess, but you can build your glutes. This is what I don't understand. It just seems so lazy to me. Regardless, right? Considering all of these factors, it's not surprising that people were downsizing. I do think that all of these factors in part were also why, the Kardashian clan downsized. Though I do think there is a more political and racial aspect of the Kardashians' decision that I will discuss in my next video on Thin allegedly being back in. Some have also theorized that the downsizing is due to the state of the economy. So if we're going to look at this purely from a financial standpoint, the procedure is still fairly popular. It's just that, the cheeks are just smaller scale, and you don't get a discount on the procedure if there's less fat transferred. So it's not that people have stopped getting them. They haven't. nor are they necessarily being more frugal about it. Though, there is something to be said about the fact that a BBL costs money, but you can lose weight for free. So, being skinny is technically more financially accessible. I assumed that, over the years that there were people who would reconsider the procedure and would be dissuaded by the fact that this surgery is quite risky. And the more common it became, the more regret and horror stories people would hear about. I mean, the more people get a procedure, the more instances of something going wrong. I mean, it's just statistically inevitable. Some of which included people waking up during the procedure. I'm not trying to make light of the nightmare that this woman went through, but I woke up during my BBL does sound like a to-be horror film. Unfortunately, there is always a possibility of this actually happening. At least temporarily waking up, not like being awake for the entire procedure. It is uncommon, but it is something that can occur if you were put under anesthesia. This procedure is also one of the most lethal cosmetic surgeries that you can get. And some of you might have seen reports of the mortality rate being, like 1 in 3,000 to 4,000. Though, according to more recent and comprehensive research, it's closer to 1 in 13,000 to 15,000. A lot of those deaths are disproportionately occurring in cheaper chop shop clinics, whereas going to a board certified doctor obviously reduces the chances of these complications happening. So the main reason why this procedure is considered so risky and the major source of people passing away stems from this thing called a fatal fat embolism, which occurs when the purified fat that is used to reshape the behind is mistakenly injected into the muscles as opposed to the subcutaneous layer, which is just underneath the skin. This fat can then travel through the veins into major organs, including the heart. Other complications include infection and sepsis, organ damage from surgeons accidentally puncturing internal organs like the bowel, and tissue necrosis, aka the fat or tissue dying. And this is not to mention the plethora of complications that can arise from the back alley shots that some people have gotten, because at that point, it is any number of substances that can be injected in there, including, mind you, substances that are flammable. Now, there is also the emergence of what some people have referred to as the BBL smell, or sit-down air, usually described as musty or sour in scent. It is caused by drainage or sweat that are trapped in the compression garments. Either that or it's bacterial overgrowth, or in some rare cases, it is tissue necrosis. Now, thankfully, this is not a common occurrence, and it usually happens during the first week of recovery and can be managed through proper hygiene, frequent garment washing, and lymphatic drainage. Now, you might have thought, that these risks, though not as statistically common as some people might think, would have been a factor in dissuading people from getting this done. However, I don't think that it actually was a major deterrent. Because, just think about it, right? Unfortunately, we don't have comprehensive stats or surveys on people who considered getting it and then didn't. We just have we have some anecdotes of people who might have thought about booking one and then canceled. And a lot of times the reasons they gave were just they realized they didn't need it. But I think that a lot of the people who would look at this laundry list of potential risks and go, yeah, this ain't for me, I guess I'll just do squats or something. Most of these people would have never gotten the procedure to begin with. And those hell-bent on booking their appointment were clearly willing to take the risk, especially if after doing, their basic research, they realize the risks when you're going to a reputable clinic are not as high. Now, the individuals that were willing to go to a shady back alley establishment where they have Jerry Springer playing in the waiting room. Clearly, I don't think those individuals were preoccupied with safety. So if the BBL has been downsized, then what is the new trend? Some say that 90s and 2000s skinny is back. Now, I got a lot to say about that topic, and why some of the theories regarding why thin is back in, even though it never really left, are only halfway satisfactory. I've seen some of these lefty video essays and they're not tapping in to the proper wavelength. Or maybe they are actually. I haven't actually seen that many of them. So maybe I am talking out of my butt. Tune in next week to hear me yap about my opinion for an appropriate amount of time, because I'm trying to keep these videos relatively short so I can actually upload every week. Let me know your thoughts below. Are you glad that this procedure is slowly going away? Or at least becoming less obnoxious and noticeable? Did you get one of these? How did that go? Do you regret it? If you want me to discuss any relevant cultural or aesthetic trend, of the past few years, or of the, I don't know, the future, the past 50 years, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know every time that I upload. And as always, thank you for watching.